Shana Tova, Happy New Year. I need a break. How many times have we emphatically said that to one another or to ourselves in the past 6 months? During that time, we wished it could have just been a blip on the radar, and we've been forced to embrace a new reality. The big things, juggling, educating our kids and staying connected to our jobs, not being able to visit our grandparents or parents in an assisted living facility, adapting to technology that may or may not have been consistent in our lives, or the small things, like grabbing a quick bite with friends. For many of us, the burden has become overwhelming, where we now say, "Can you watch the kids for a little while? Just give me an hour." But what happens when that hour turns into 3 hours? When that turns into 6 hours? What if I don't carry my weight in my household or with my friends or at my job? Will I disappoint if I take some me time? The struggles are real, and there are thousands of other examples. The new year is supposed to be a time of limitless possibilities. We reflect on the past and look to the future, identifying ways where we can improve. Some of us proclaim New Year's resolutions. I'm going to lose weight this year so I can be healthier for those I love. I'm going to volunteer in the community and give back. I want to join a synagogue to develop my Jewish identity and that of my family. Our lists are long. Approaching the new year with these types of resolutions present us with challenges, though. The authentic intention of what we have just promised ourselves is always in question. Do I really want to do this? And then the answer comes in the follow-through of whether or not I have kept my promise. We go to the gym once or twice and then something comes up. We volunteer until other obligations prove more important. We join the temple and become a part of a community until we no longer use it. Possibility becomes another roadblock, derailed. Not because we do too much, but because we got in our own way. Although painted in a caring and giving light, you ended up dismissing the initial reason you resolved. Your action became about you in the end. You dismissed the rest. Forgetting about others deeply affects relationships. We've reached yet another High Holy Days, another new year. The High Holy Days experience is entirely about relationships. How do we balance the need for relationship versus self versus our relationship with others? This Rosh HaShanah, let's focus on the idea of it's about you and me. It's about us. It is a balancing act, to be sure. To be in a relationship with others, we must be willing to give. And this can't happen unless we really focus in on our emotions. For example, when someone feels an emotion, they might project that emotion onto someone else. In other words, the action becomes about their emotion rather than the action itself. A person might have lost their job and need to remove the luxuries they have enjoyed. Then they call the gym and blame them, saying, "I don't have time. The facilities aren't good. One of your workers insulted me. I can't support a place like that." The gym, the workers, they've fallen victim to becoming a scapegoat. The reality, this was about their sadness, about the situation of losing their job, and in turn, portrays a form of emotional selfishness. It hurts deeply, like pouring salt on a wound. What is an unreasonable yet frequent response? We dismiss others to focus on our own healing. We become selfish. People view us as selfish. And no doubt, when someone believes you're selfish, you feel criticized, demeaned, hurt, because the message is clear and forthcoming. You are thinking too much about your needs and well-being over that of others. You are thought of as inconsiderate and even immoral. Nobody wants to be thought of that way. And more importantly, no one wants to feel that way. The Torah's holiness code teaches ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, to love your neighbor as you would yourself. As we constantly navigate a world filled with self-interest and getting slowed down by the speed bumps of negativity, we need to get to a place of it's not about me, it's about you and me. It's about us. This requires a refocused approach on how we interact with ourselves and our community. But Rabbi, I've heard of Hillel's teaching in Pirkei Avot, if not for myself, then who will be for me? Well, that's true. We should care about ourselves. The next part of the text, though, reads, if I am only for myself, then what am I? Hillel's quote presents a hierarchy of responsibility where we identify both our own needs and those of others. This can happen, but with an understanding of how to distinguish between them. Psychologist John Johnson identifies 3 types of selfishness: bad, neutral, and good selfishness. Bad selfishness is perhaps the most obvious, the one we most identify with the word selfishness, where we intentionally act to benefit ourselves at the expense of others. Cases of theft and fraud, not wearing a mask in public during a global pandemic, or criticizing your own community for your own benefit to save face. Some identify this as a win-lose transaction. Often, win-lose transactions stem from projecting insecurity by manipulating others physically and or emotionally. Neutral selfishness includes looking after your own well-being in ways that do not substantially affect or involve other people. Perhaps you set aside 30 minutes every morning, 5 minutes to meditate, 5 minutes to make breakfast, and 20 minutes to catch up on the news, exercising. Maybe you wash your face every night so your complexion remains clear and your skin soft. Self-care falls into this category and remains essential for our own well-being. Occasional self-care helps you, and in turn provides a foundation to lead a productive life. And let's be real, you deserve it. The key, though, being the word occasional. Actions like these benefit you and do not directly involve others, hence the neutral designation. Now, what about good selfishness? How can there be such a thing? This is what we refer to as a win-win transaction. Growing up, I collected baseball cards. I'd be so excited to open up the pack and see who I received. Naturally, I'd find duplicates and want to trade them for ones that I have yet to own. So I traded my Willie Mays card for my friend's Mickey Mantle card. We both get what we desire and benefit from the trade. The exchanges, though, are not only material. Have you ever smiled at someone only to have them return the favor? What about some post-pandemic actions, like giving a hug or a high-fiving one another while you celebrate a team's victory? All participants feel included and willingly contribute to the situation. Mutual positivity enables good selfishness. That isn't, it's all about me. That's, it's all about you and me. It's about us. Bad selfishness is simply antithetical to Jewish values. My friends, as Jews, as Americans, as people, we must reframe our attitudes to mutually benefit. We must establish the proper hierarchy where empathy matters in the grand scheme. We must practice good selfishness, where we care for others and reimagine it's about us attitude. Our tradition not only teaches it, it stresses it time and again. Modern rabbis use Pirkei Avot, the ethics of our ancestors, to provide deep understanding and common sense to an otherwise complicated world. Among the more popular verses is, "It is not your duty to complete the work, but neither are you free to desist from it." While placing the weight of the world on your shoulders would be an impossible task to complete, we don't have the luxury to say, well, someone else will take care of it. It's their problem. Do what is beneficial to you, but also to those who surround you. You do not ignore your own needs, but neither are you free to dismiss anyone else's. That is the true definition of good selfishness, a win-win relationship. Let's examine this idea of it's about you and me, it's about us, shall we? I know what you is, I know what me is, but what does us mean? Shir HaMa'alot is the epitome of us. We laugh and cry together. We mourn and celebrate together. We pray and we listen together. We care for one another through thick and thin. Does Orange County identify as a good example of us? What about your family? Are you a part of the us if you disagree with your family unit? How about the workplace? Any healthy relationship functions with the ability to rise above dissent and to offer love and support regardless of the time. What makes us us is the ability to care about one another. My friends, the Levitical text doesn't read, love your neighbor when it's convenient. It says, love your neighbor as you would yourself. Our tradition does not teach, it's not about you. It stresses, it's not all about you. It's about us. It teaches that the best way to care for oneself is to care for others, a daunting yet important task. It's easier said than done, but that's why it's a mitzvah, a commandment. The most challenging commandments to fulfill are often the most meaningful and influential to the greater world. I'm reminded of the midrashic story of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. He was a beloved Torah scholar of the 2nd century who studied day and night, no vacations, simply Torah. The day after Rosh HaShanah, he showed up at the door of his nephew's home and began to lecture them about the importance of tzedakah, charity. Although they didn't have any money to spare and didn't quite understand his urgency, they listened, for when Rabbi Shimon spoke, everyone listened. He taught, give with an open hand, write down every penny you give, and make the sum enormous at the end of the year. Almost a year later, the nephews had another strange visit from a posse of Roman soldiers with an order for their arrest. Someone accused them of selling silk without paying tax to the government. The nephews began weeping and protesting their innocence, but to no avail. Trembling with fear, they were led off to prison where they were given a choice. Either pay an outrageous fine of 600 dinar or produce an even more outrageous priced silk garment for the king, both of which were utterly beyond their means. When Rabbi Shimon heard what had happened, he immediately rushed to the prison and got special permission to visit his relatives. Where is the account of the charity you gave, he asked. How much did you give? They replied, almost 595 dinar. So close to the 600 threshold, Rabbi Shimon asks, do you have any money with you? They indeed have 5 dinars sewn into their garments just in case they needed it. Rabbi Shimon took the money, paid the guards, and they were released after their charges were dropped. Rabbi Shimon explained to his nephews what had happened. This past Rosh HaShanah, I dozed off and dreamt that the government would demand of you 600 dinar. That is why I told you to give tzedakah, Not only is it the right thing to do, your giving will repay you in goodness. Perplexed, the nephews asked, "Then why didn't you tell us about that? We would have given the money immediately and spared ourselves all this anguish." "But then," replied Rabbi Shimon, "you wouldn't have done the mitzvah for its own sake." These are the types of moral code our ancestors desired to pass to our children and to future generations. As told in the story of Rabbi Shimon and his nephews, giving tzedakah, for example, is a beautiful act of good selfishness, one that benefits everyone. But doing so needs to have the right intention, acting with an open heart to the world, establishing a win-win relationship. Because in the end, caring for the stranger is the right thing to do. It's who we are as Jews. We care for the stranger as well as ourselves. It is about us. I've been your rabbi for a little more than a year now. I know each of you care deeply for one another. That is a hallmark value of SHM and what SHM sees in you. Throughout your life, and likely most recently, you have seen a world that suffers from an intense division and struggle for others' care. And yes, as Americans, we have the freedom to make our own choices regarding our actions. But we are here, present in this moment, tuning into services, praying on Rosh HaShanah for a reason, to reflect on our previous year and how we can become even better people, even better Jews in the year to come, and to complete the necessary annual cheshbon hanefesh, check of the soul. And that responsibility comes with how we incorporate others on our journey. We would do well to ask ourselves, when we think of the relationships in our lives, which description do we fit? Do we act with bad, neutral, or good selfishness? This new year of 5781, I hope you'll choose good selfishness time and again. We aren't perfect. We make mistakes, and that's okay. The High Holy Days give us the tools to create win-win relationships. We have the roadmap to do good. Our tradition provides the answers. May we strive to understand and take to heart commandments like love your neighbor as yourself. On this Rosh HaShanah, it is upon us to do the right thing and collectively say, it's about you and me. It's about us. Shana Tova.